They say betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the people you trust the most. I used to think that was just something bitter people said when their hearts got broken. I never thought I'd be one of them. But here I am, standing in the wreckage of the life I built, trying to make sense of it all. And the worst part? It wasn't some stranger who destroyed it. It was my wife. And my best friend. My business partner. This is how I found out. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, I want to share another touching story with you. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It motivates us to create more quality content for you. Let's continue. I should have noticed the signs earlier. Looking back, they were all there, staring me right in the face. The late-night phone calls that she brushed off as wrong numbers. The sudden interest in dressing up just to run errands. The way she'd pull away when I tried to kiss her, like my touch was something foreign. But when you trust someone, really trust them, you don't see the cracks until it's too late. My name is Mike Lawson. I'm a 38-year-old guy from Indiana, the kind of man you'd call ordinary. I run a construction business with my best friend, Jake Carter. We started it together fresh out of high school, two small-town guys with big dreams. And we did it. Built something real. Something solid. Just like my marriage. Or so I thought. I met Lisa at a friend's barbecue 10 years ago. She was beautiful, smart, and had this way of making you feel like the only person in the world when she talked to you. We got married after 2 years of dating, and for a long time, life was good. Simple. Predictable. Until it wasn't. The day I found out was a Tuesday. Funny how normal days turn into the ones you'll never forget. I had wrapped up work early and decided to surprise Lisa with her favorite takeout, Thai food from the place across town. We hadn't been connecting lately, and I figured a quiet dinner at home might help. Maybe I'd been working too much. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. I pulled into the driveway and noticed something odd right away. Jake's truck was parked out front. That wasn't unusual in itself. He was family, practically. He and Lisa got along great, always had. But he never just showed up unannounced when I wasn't home. And something about the way his truck was parked haphazard, like he was in a hurry, made my gut tighten. I walked up to the front door, takeout bag in one hand, keys in the other. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped inside. And then I heard it. A muffled laugh. A whisper. Coming from upstairs. My feet felt like lead as I climbed the stairs, my heart hammering in my chest. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I'd open that bedroom door and find Lisa folding laundry, talking on the phone. Maybe. But I knew. I knew before I even opened the door. And when I did, there they were. Lisa. In our bed. With Jake. For a second, the world stopped. The air left my lungs, my vision blurred, and my body went cold. Lisa gasped and scrambled to pull the sheets over herself, her face a mask of shock and panic. Jake just froze, his eyes wide, like a deer caught in headlights. Mike, Lisa started, her voice shaking. But I didn't want to hear it. I dropped the bag of food. The sound of it hitting the floor seemed distant, like it was happening in some other reality. Jake swung his legs off the bed, reaching for his jeans. Listen, man, I can explain. I laughed. Actually laughed. A hollow, humorless sound. Explain, I said, my voice eerily calm. Go ahead, Jake. Explain to me why my wife is in our bed with my best friend. He had nothing. No words. Lisa looked like she might cry. Like she was the victim here. I shook my head, backing out of the room, my stomach twisting into knots. You know what? I said. I don't need an explanation. I turned and walked out. Because what else was there to do? I didn't yell. Didn't break anything. Didn't throw punches, though God knows I wanted to. I just walked. Out the door, down the driveway, past Jake's stupid truck. Because the moment you see the truth, there's no going back. And I had just seen mine. I don't remember getting in my truck. I don't remember turning the key, shifting into drive, or even pulling out of the driveway. But somehow, I was on the road, the world blurring past me. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart was still hammering, but my mind was eerily quiet. Shock does that to you. It numbs you, wraps you in a kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Lisa, Jake, my best friend, my business partner, the two people I trusted most, the two people I would have sworn on my life would never betray me. But they had, and they did. I forced a breath through my nose, trying to steady myself. The roads were mostly empty. It was still early afternoon. People were at work. Kids were in school. Just another Tuesday for the rest of the world. But for me, everything had changed. Where the hell was I even going? I looked down at my phone, still sitting in the cup holder, the screen dark. No calls. No texts. Not from Lisa. Not from Jake. Good. I didn't want to hear from either of them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I pulled into the parking lot of a small gas station on the edge of town, killed the engine, and just sat there. For a long time. Staring at the steering wheel. Staring at my hands. Lisa's hands had been on him. Jake's hands had been on her. In our bed. My stomach twisted, while rising in my throat. I pushed the truck door open, stepped out, and braced my hands against the cool metal. The fresh air helped, but only a little. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, like someone had taken a crowbar to my ribs and caved in my chest. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Go home? To her? Go to the office? See him? The thought alone made my skin crawl. I needed time. Space. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called Ryan. Ryan Davis had been my friend since high school. The kind of guy who'd show up at your door with a case of beer after a bad day. No questions asked. He wasn't part of the business, never mixed friendship with money, he always said. But he was solid. The kind of friend who didn't disappear when things got hard. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Mike? His voice was casual at first, but something in the way I breathed must have tipped him off. What's wrong? I swallowed, my throat dry. You home? Yeah. You good? No. That was all I needed to say. Come over, he said immediately. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'm on my way. I hung up, climbed back into the truck, and started driving. Ryan lived about 15 minutes outside of town, in a house that sat on a couple of acres. He'd always been the guy who needed space. Said the quiet kept him sane. I pulled into his driveway, and before I even shut off the engine, the front door opened. Ryan stepped out onto the porch, barefoot, a beer already in his hand. He was wearing an old baseball cap and a t-shirt that had probably been clean at some point in the last decade. He took one look at me and swore under his breath. I got out of the truck, and before I could even say a word, he was handing me the beer. Tell me. So I did. I told him everything. From the weird feeling in my gut when I saw Jake's truck to the moment I opened the bedroom door and saw them together. Ryan didn't interrupt. Didn't ask questions. He just listened. And when I finally stopped talking, when I had nothing left but the weight of it pressing down on me, he leaned back against the porch railing and let out a long breath. That's some real messed up shit. I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh. It was something hollow and bitter, something I barely recognized coming from my own mouth. No kidding. Ryan took a sip of his beer, thinking, You want to hit him? I looked at him, surprised. What? You want to hit him? 'Cause I back you up. He shrugged. Hell, I'd hit him for you if you want. The scary thing was, I did want to. I wanted to break Jake's nose. I wanted to wipe that shocked look off his face, make him feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. But violence wouldn't fix this. Wouldn't fix anything. I don't know, I admitted. Ryan nodded. What about Lisa? I exhaled through my nose, running a hand down my face. I don't know about that either. I had no idea what came next. Divorce? Maybe. Probably. But I wasn't ready to make that decision yet. You staying at home tonight? Ryan asked. I shook my head. Can't. You can crash here. Yeah. Ryan scoffed. Dumbass question. Of course you can. I got a couch. It's ugly, but it's comfortable. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Thanks, man. Ryan just clinked his beer bottle against mine. Anytime. I sat there on his porch, staring out at the darkening sky, trying to process what my life had just turned into. Tomorrow, I'd have to deal with Lisa. With Jake. With the business, the house, the mess of it all. But tonight, I'd just sit here. And breathe. I woke up on Ryan's couch to the sound of bacon sizzling and the smell of fresh coffee. For a second, just a second, I forgot. Forgot that my life had imploded less than 24 hours ago. Forgot that my wife had been in bed with my best friend. But then it all came rushing back like a freight train, slamming into my chest with the same sickening weight it had the moment I saw them together. I let out a long breath, pushing myself upright. My back ached from the couch, my head throbbed from the beers I'd downed the night before, but none of that compared to the knot in my gut. This wasn't just a bad dream. It was real, and I still had to face it. Ryan was in the kitchen, flipping bacon in a pan, a second mug of coffee already set on the counter for me. He glanced over when he heard me moving. Morning, he said, his tone casual. You look like shit. I let out a humorless chuckle. Feel like it too. He gestured toward the coffee. Drink. Eat. Then figure out what the hell you're gonna do. That was the question, wasn't it? What the hell was I gonna do? I sat at the counter, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. They haven't called. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Neither of them? I shook my head. Not a single text. Not a missed call. Ryan whistled low. Damn. He didn't have to say anything else. They were avoiding me. Avoiding the fallout. Cowards. I took a sip of coffee, staring at my phone, the empty screen mocking me. You gonna call her? Ryan asked. I thought about it. Thought about what I'd even say. Thought about what I wanted to hear from her. From him. I don't know, I admitted. But I can't just ignore it. Ryan nodded. Then don't. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. There was only one way to do this. I had to go home. The drive back was different. Last time, I'd left in shock. Numb. This time, I was angry. The betrayal had settled into my bones overnight, hardened into something heavier. I gripped the steering wheel, my jaw tight, my thoughts a tangled mess of questions. How long? Why? Did she ever love me? Did he ever respect me? By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were shaking. Not with fear. Not even with sadness. With rage. Lisa's car was there. Good. I killed the engine, stepped out, and slammed the truck door harder than necessary. The house felt different as I walked up to it. It wasn't home anymore. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The moment I stepped inside, Lisa was there, sitting on the couch, waiting for me. She looked like hell. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying all night. She was still in pajamas, her hair pulled into a messy bun. But I didn't care. She wasn't the victim here. She was the one who did this. Mike, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I shut the door behind me, crossing my arms over my chest. Go ahead. She blinked, confused. What? Explain, I said, my voice tight. You had all night to come up with something. So let's hear it. Lisa swallowed hard. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together, before finally meeting my gaze. I'm sorry, she said. I let out a bitter laugh. Sorry. She flinched. Sorry doesn't cut it, Lisa. Not for this. Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen. I scoffed. Right. You just tripped and fell into bed with my best friend. She let out a shaky breath. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. She hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. How long? I asked. Lisa's lip trembled. Mike? How long? She looked away. A few months. My stomach twisted. Months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. All this time, I'd been working, coming home, sleeping next to her, completely unaware that she was sneaking around with Jake behind my back. The man I trusted. The man I'd built a business with. I took a step closer, my voice low. Why Lisa? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know. Bullshit. She flinched again, wiping at her face. I felt alone. I stared at her. Alone. She nodded, sniffling. You've been so busy. With work, with everything. And Jake, he was there. He listened. One thing led to another, and I held up a hand, cutting her off. I didn't need to hear the details. She had a choice. She could have talked to me. She could have told me how she was feeling. Instead, she chose him. Do you love him? I asked. Lisa's breath hitched. She shook her head quickly. No, it wasn't. It didn't mean anything. I clenched my jaw. It meant something to me. Silence. She wiped at her face again, her shoulders shaking. I didn't want to lose you, Mike. I let out a hollow laugh. You should have thought about that before you climbed into bed with my best friend. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I should have felt something for her in that moment. Sympathy. Sadness. But I didn't. I just felt done. I turned away, running a hand through my hair, trying to calm the storm brewing inside me. This wasn't just about Lisa. It was about Jake, too. And I still had to deal with him. Lisa's voice was small when she spoke again. Are you going to leave me? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not yet. Here's a moment when anger turns into something else. Something sharper. Colder. It's the moment when you realize you're not just mad, you're done. I left Lisa sitting there on the couch, crying into her hands, and I walked out. I didn't yell. Didn't slam the door. Didn't even look back. I didn't have the energy. There was only one person left to face. Jake. And I wasn't walking away from this until I got what I needed. The office felt different when I pulled into the lot. It was the same brick building we bought together 6 years ago, back when the business had really started to take off. Same glass door with Lawson and Carter Construction in bold black letters. But now it just looked wrong. Tainted. Like I was seeing it for the first time. Jake's truck was parked out front. Same as always. Like nothing had changed. Like the world hadn't shifted under my feet the second I walked in on him and Lisa. I cut the engine, stepped out, and walked inside. Jenny, our receptionist, looked up from her desk, her eyes widening slightly when she saw me. "Mike," she said, surprised. I didn't know you were coming in today. Is he here?" I asked, my voice steady. Jenny hesitated. She glanced toward Jake's office. "Yeah, but—" I didn't wait for her to finish. I pushed open the office door without knocking. Jake was sitting at his desk, typing on his laptop, looking so damn normal it made my blood boil. He looked up when he heard the door, and for a second, just a split second, I saw something in his face. Guilt. Fear. Then he masked it. "Mike," he said, like he wasn't expecting me. Like he hadn't spent the night staring at his phone, knowing this was coming. I shut the door behind me. "You and me," I said. "We're gonna talk." Jake exhaled slowly and leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. "Yeah," he muttered. I figured. I took a step forward, planting my hands on his desk. "How long?" He hesitated. I slammed my fist against the wood. "How long, Jake?" "A few months," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded slowly, jaw clenched. "That's what she said." He flinched. I studied him, this man I'd known since I was 18. The guy I'd built a business with. The guy I trusted. I didn't even recognize him. "You looked me in the eye every damn day," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "We worked side by side. You were in my home. And the whole time, you were screwing my wife behind my back." Jake swallowed hard. "It wasn't like that." I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, really? Then tell me, what the hell was it like?" He didn't answer. Because there was nothing he could say. I pushed off the desk and started pacing. I needed to move. If I didn't, I wasn't sure what I'd do. "Was it a joke to you?" I asked. "Some thrill? Sleeping with your best friend's wife, was that fun for you, Mike? Or did you actually care about her?" I snapped. Jake's jaw tightened. "No." I turned to face him. "No. What?" "No, it wasn't a joke," he said. "And no, I don't love her." I stared at him, my mind racing. "Then why?" He let out a breath, raking a hand through his hair. "I don't know, man." I scoffed. "That's a real shitty answer." Jake sighed. "Look, I wish I had something better to tell you. But I don't. It was stupid. Selfish. I messed up, and I know it." I clenched my fists. "You ruined everything, Jake." His eyes met mine. "I know." We stood there in silence, the weight of it pressing down on us. Finally, I spoke. "We're done." Jake blinked. "What?" "The business. The partnership. It's over." Jake straightened in his chair. "Mike, come on. No." I shook my head. "I don't want to hear it." I walked over to the office window, staring out at the lot. At everything we'd built together. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that I couldn't look at him without seeing Lisa. Without seeing them together. "How do you expect us to work side by side after this?" I asked, turning back to him. "How the hell do you think I can trust you after this?" Jake opened his mouth, then closed it. He had nothing. I took a step closer, my voice quiet but firm. "I'll buy you out. We'll figure out the numbers. But you're done here." Jake's shoulders sagged, like the fight had left him. Like he already knew this was how it had to go. After a long pause, he nodded. "Okay," he said. It wasn't relief on his face. It wasn't even regret. It was acceptance. Because deep down, he knew he destroyed more than just a friendship. He destroyed everything. I turned toward the door, gripping the handle, then paused. "Was it worth it?" I asked, my voice hollow. Jake didn't answer right away. And when he finally did, his voice was quiet. "No." I didn't look back. I just walked out. You don't really feel the full weight of betrayal all at once. It comes in waves. 1 minute, you think you've got a handle on it. Your mind is clear, your next steps are laid out, and you feel like you're in control. Then, out of nowhere, another wave crashes over you. The memories, the anger, the questions you still don't have answers to. And suddenly, you're drowning all over again. That's how the next few days felt. Like I was trapped in an ocean I never saw coming. After I left the office, I didn't go back home. I couldn't. I drove. Just aimlessly, for hours, letting the roads take me wherever they wanted. The sun set, the sky darkened, and still, I kept driving. When I finally pulled into Ryan's driveway, it was close to midnight. He must have heard my truck because before I could even knock, the front door swung open. "Shit," he muttered, taking one look at me. "Come in." I stepped inside, feeling like a man who had walked through fire. Ryan grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, handed me one, then sat down on the couch across from me. "How'd it go?" I took a long swig before answering. I told him we're done. Ryan nodded slowly. "And?" He agreed. I stared at the label on the bottle, my fingers peeling at the edges. "I'll buy him out. We'll split the assets. We're untangling everything." Ryan let out a low whistle. "Damn." I exhaled through my nose. "Yeah." A beat of silence passed. Then Ryan asked the question I'd been avoiding. "And Lisa?" I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, my mind replaying the conversation with her over and over again. The tears, the apologies, the excuses. Was she sorry? Sure. But was she sorry she did it, or sorry she got caught? That was the real question. "I don't know yet," I admitted. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You thinking about staying?" I shook my head. "I'm thinking about how much of my life is tied to hers. The house, the business, our families, everything." He nodded, understanding. "It's a hell of a thing to untangle." I ran a hand over my face. "I don't even know where to start." Ryan took a sip of his beer, studying me. "You love her." I looked up, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I hesitated. Did I love her? A week ago, the answer would have been easy. But now, I wasn't so sure. "I don't know," I finally admitted. Ryan sighed. "Well, that's your answer, man." The next morning, I drove back to the house. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Lisa was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. A coffee cup in front of her, untouched. She looked up when she saw me, her eyes puffy, her face pale. She'd been waiting. I pulled out a chair across from her and sat down. "We need to talk," I said. She swallowed hard and nodded. "Okay." I leaned forward, my elbows on the table. "I talked to Jake." Lisa looked down, her fingers tightening around the coffee cup. I exhaled slowly. "I'm buying him out of the business." "He's done." Lisa's head snapped up. "Mike, you don't have to." "Yes," I cut her off. "I do." Her eyes searched mine. "And what about us?" I leaned back, crossing my arms. "That's what I'm here to figure out." Lisa blinked. "You mean you haven't decided yet?" "No," I said honestly. She let out a shaky breath, nodding. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady. "I need the truth." Her lips parted slightly, but I didn't let her speak yet. "How did this start?" I asked. "I need to know." She swallowed, looking away. "Mike." "Tell me." She exhaled. "It started after your dad died." I frowned. My dad had passed away about 6 months ago, heart attack. Sudden, no warning. It had wrecked me. But what the hell did that have to do with her sleeping with Jake? "What do you mean?" I asked, my tone sharp. Lisa played with the handle of her cup, not looking at me. "You shut down after he died. You buried yourself in work. You stopped talking to me. You wouldn't let me in." I clenched my jaw. "And instead of talking to me, you went to him?" She finally looked up, tears in her eyes. "I was lonely, Mike. I was hurting too, and I felt like I lost you." I let out a bitter laugh. "So you turned to Jake?" She shook her head quickly. "Not at first. We just talked." I swear, at first, it was just that. I scoffed. And then, Lisa wiped at her face. "I don't know. One night, we had too much to drink, and it just happened." I clenched my fists. "And you kept doing it?" "For months." She nodded, her shoulders shaking. I leaned forward again, my voice low. "Did you ever plan on telling me?" Lisa hesitated. "I wanted to, but I was afraid." "Afraid of losing me?" I asked. "Or afraid of the consequences?" She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. I leaned back, letting out a slow breath. Lisa wiped at her eyes again. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but I love you, Mike, and I'll do anything to fix this." I studied her for a long time, and maybe a part of me wanted to believe her. But another part, the part that had been shattered the second I walked into that bedroom, knew better. I pushed my chair back and stood. Lisa's breath hitched. "Mike?" I shook my head. "I don't think I can do this." Her face crumpled. "Please." "I just need time," I said, my voice firm. "And right now, I can't be here." Lisa covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. I turned toward the door, grabbed my keys, and without another word, I left. They say time heals all wounds. But what if some wounds don't heal? What if some just sit there, raw and open, no matter how much time passes? That was the thought running through my mind as I sat alone in a cheap motel room on the outskirts of town. I checked in after leaving Lisa, using cash, not even sure how long I planned on staying. Just long enough to breathe. Long enough to think. The problem was, thinking hadn't done me a damn bit of good. Because no matter how many times I replayed it, no matter how many angles I tried to see it from, it always led me back to the same question. Could I ever forgive her? And worse, did I even want to? The first few nights were the hardest. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Lisa and Jake. Her hands on him. Their whispered voices in my house. In my bed. I woke up more than once covered in sweat, heart hammering, the motel ceiling spinning above me. During the day, I distracted myself with the business. If I wasn't in the office sorting through paperwork, I was at job sites, making sure things were running smoothly. Jake was gone. That part was done. He'd signed the papers, taken his payout, and left town. Good riddance. But Lisa? Lisa was still there. Still waiting for an answer. Still calling, still texting. Most of the time, I ignored her. But one night, about a week after I left, she sent a message that stopped me cold. Mike, I'm not pregnant. I took a test. Thought you should know. I sat there staring at my phone, my mind blank. Pregnant? It had never even crossed my mind. I did the math in my head. Lisa and I hadn't been together in a while. Not since before I caught them. If she had been pregnant, it wouldn't have been mine. My stomach twisted at the thought. I didn't text back. Didn't know what to say. I just set the phone down, exhaled slowly, and ran a hand over my face. Would that have made my decision easier? Or harder? Either way, the question was still the same. Could I ever go back to her? And if I did, well, what would that say about me? 2 days later, Ryan showed up at the motel. I just stepped out of the shower when I heard the knock. I opened the door, towel around my shoulders, and found him standing there with a 6-pack of beer and a bag of greasy takeout. Figured you could use a break from motel food, he said. I stepped aside, letting him in. You say that like I've been eating it all. Ryan frowned, giving me a once-over. Yeah, you look like shit. Appreciate that, I muttered, grabbing a beer. He handed me the takeout bag and flopped onto the motel chair. So? You made a decision yet? I sighed, sinking onto the bed. No. Ryan cracked open his beer and took a sip. What's stopping you? I scoffed. Everything. He nodded, like he expected that answer. So let's break it down. You still love her? I opened my mouth. Closed it. I didn't know anymore. I thought I did. I admit it. But now, I don't know if I love her, or if I just love the life we had. Or maybe the life I thought we had. Ryan took another sip, considering that. Okay. Then let me ask you this. Do you think you could ever trust her again? I stared at the floor. Because that's what it comes down to, man, Ryan continued. Love is one thing. But if you can't trust her? If every time she walks out the door, you're gonna wonder who she's with, what she's doing, then what's the point? I exhaled slowly. He was right. And deep down, I already knew my answer. I don't think I can, I said quietly. Ryan nodded. Then you got your answer. I ran a hand through my hair, letting the weight of it sink in. That was it, wasn't it? That was the final nail in the coffin. Lisa and I were done. The next morning, I packed up my things and left the motel. I drove straight to the house. Lisa was in the kitchen when I walked in, just like last time. Her eyes widened when she saw me, hope flashing across her face. I didn't drag it out. We're done, I said. Lisa froze. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the counter. Mike. I shook my head. I can't do this. I can't be with someone I don't trust. Tears welled in her eyes. Please. Can't we? No, my voice was firm. Final. It's over, Lisa. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. I didn't comfort her. Didn't try to ease the pain. Because she wasn't the one who got betrayed. I turned away, heading for the door. Mike, she choked out. I love you. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. Then, without looking back, I said the words I never thought I'd say to her. I don't believe you. And then I walked out. For good. The first thing I felt when I walked out of that house wasn't relief. It wasn't freedom, either. It was emptiness. A strange, quiet kind of nothingness. Like standing in the wreckage of a house fire and realizing there's nothing left to salvage. Lisa and I had spent 10 years together. A decade of memories, of routines, of small, unspoken things that made up a life. And now, in the span of a few weeks, it was all gone. No going back. No fixing it. Just me. Alone. And for the first time in a long time, I had no idea what came next. I moved into a rental house on the other side of town. It was small, nothing special, just a place with 4 walls and a roof. But it was mine. No shared memories. No ghosts of Lisa in every corner. Just a blank slate. The business, at least, was stable. I spent the first few weeks drowning myself in work, making sure the transition from Jake leaving went as smoothly as possible. I hired a new foreman, took over some of the jobs Jake used to handle. The employees didn't ask questions. They knew better. Jake was gone. That was all that mattered. Lisa, though? She was still around. Not in my life, not anymore, but in town. In the places we used to go. At the grocery store. At the gas station. The first time I ran into her, it was awkward as hell. I was walking out of a coffee shop when she was walking in. Our eyes met for half a second, and in that half second, I saw it. The hurt. The regret. She started to say something. I didn't stop to listen. Just walked past her and kept going. And that's when I knew I'd turned a corner. Because a few weeks ago, seeing her would have felt like a punch to the gut. Now, it didn't feel like anything at all. One night, about a month after I left Lisa, Ryan and I were sitting in his backyard, drinking beers around a fire pit. "You ever think about dating again?" he asked. I laughed. "Jesus, Ryan, it's been a month." He shrugged. "I'm just saying, man. You're not dead. You're a single guy now. Might as well enjoy it." I took a sip of beer, staring into the fire. Not interested. Ryan didn't push. Just nodded. Truth was, the idea of being with someone else felt weird. Not because I missed Lisa, but because I'd spent so long being Mike and Lisa that I didn't know how to just be Mike anymore. I needed time to figure that out. Who was I, outside of that marriage? What did I want for myself? For once, I didn't have to answer to anyone. Didn't have to worry about what someone else needed. It was just me now. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. A few weeks later, I finalized the divorce papers. It was surprisingly simple. No fighting. No dragging it out in court. Lisa didn't contest anything. She just signed the papers and sent them back. Like she knew she'd already lost. Like she knew there was no fixing what she broke. I sat at my desk, staring at the final document for a long time before signing my name at the bottom. And just like that, it was official. Marriage over. 10 years gone, reduced to a few sheets of paper. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow breath. I expected to feel something. Sadness. Regret. But all I felt was peace. Like I could finally close this chapter and start a new one. A better one. Whatever that looked like. The first real sign that I was moving on came on a Sunday morning. I woke up, stretched, made coffee, and stood on the porch of my little rental house, looking out at the quiet street. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt good. Not just okay. Not just surviving. Actually good. I wasn't thinking about Lisa. I wasn't replaying the betrayal. I wasn't drowning in the past. I was just here, in this moment, sipping my coffee, breathing in the crisp morning air. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't broken. I wasn't ruined. I was still me. And I still had a hell of a lot of life left to live. Once I accepted that, things started changing fast. I put more energy into the business, not just to keep it running, but to grow it. Now that Jake was gone, I didn't have to split every decision with someone else. I started bidding on bigger projects, expanding our crew, taking risks I'd never have taken before. And it worked. We landed a contract to build a new set of office buildings on the east side of town. It was the biggest job I'd ever taken on. For the first time in a long time, I was excited. Not just for work, but for life. One Friday night, Ryan and I were out at a local bar, one of the old spots we used to hit before life got so damn complicated. The place was packed. Music playing, people laughing, that hum of energy in the air. And that's when I saw her. Not Lisa. Someone new. She was standing at the bar, sipping a drink, talking to a friend. Long brown hair, easy smile, a kind of relaxed confidence that caught my eye immediately. Ryan noticed. "Go talk to her," he said, nudging me. I smirked. "What am I, 16? Dude, you're single now. Time to start acting like it." I took a sip of my beer, thinking. The truth was, I hadn't even considered dating again. Not seriously. But standing there, looking at this woman, I realized something. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of being alone. Not of moving on. And maybe, just maybe, not of letting someone in again. I exhaled, set my drink down, and made my way toward the bar. Walking up to that bar felt like stepping into a different life. Not because I was nervous, I wasn't. Not really. but because it had been so damn long since I'd done anything like this. Since I'd wanted to. Lisa and I had been together for a decade. Before her, I wasn't exactly the kind of guy who played the field. I'd had a few relationships, but nothing serious. So this? Walking up to a stranger, introducing myself, seeing where it went? It felt unfamiliar, but not wrong. Not like I was betraying something. Because for the first time in a long time, there was nothing holding me back. She noticed me before I even said a word. Turned toward me, eyebrows slightly raised, like she already knew why I was there. Her friend, who I barely registered, gave me a knowing look and mumbled something before walking off. And then it was just the two of us. "Hey," I said, leaning against the bar. "I'm Mike." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. Then she smiled. "I'm Sarah." Sarah. Simple. Easy to say. Not weighted down by memories or regret. I gestured to her drink. "What are we drinking tonight?" She glanced at the glass in her hand. "Whiskey sour." "Good choice," I said. "Classic." She smirked. "And you? What's your drink of choice?" "Usually just a beer," I admitted. "But I've been known to branch out when the occasion calls for it." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Is this one of those occasions?" I grinned. "Guess that depends. You gonna make it worth my while?" She laughed. A real laugh, not forced, not polite. And just like that, something clicked. It wasn't forced. It wasn't awkward. It just was. And for the first time since my world fell apart, I felt like me again. We talked for a while. She asked what I did, and I told her about the business. She worked in marketing freelance, mostly, but she liked it. We swapped a few stories, shared a few laughs. And the whole time, I kept waiting for the part where my past would crash down on me. For the voice in the back of my head to tell me I wasn't ready, that I was moving too fast. But it never came. Because the truth was, I was ready. Not to fall in love again. Not yet. But to move forward. To stop letting the past define me. To live again. At the end of the night, I walked her to her car. She hesitated before opening the door, turning back to look at me. "You're not from around here, are you?" I raised an eyebrow. Worn and raised. Sarah gave me a look. "I mean, this version of you. The one who's out at bars, flirting with strangers." I smirked. "That obvious, huh?" She smiled. "A little." I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "It's new for me." "Divorce?" she guessed. I nodded. "Yeah." She didn't flinch. Didn't get that awkward look some people do when you mention a failed marriage. Instead, she just tilted her head, considering me. "Let me guess," she said. "You didn't end it." I shook my head. "Nope." She nodded, like she understood. "Yeah. You don't have the look of a guy who did the breaking." I chuckled. "And what's that look?" Sarah smiled. "Like you've been through hell but made it out the other side." Something about that hit deeper than I expected. I let out a breath, nodding. "Yeah, that sounds about right." She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a pen. I watched as she took my hand and scribbled something on my palm. Her number. She capped the pen, looking up at me. "Call me sometime." I glanced down at the numbers on my skin, then back at her. "I just might," I said. Sarah smiled, opened her car door, and slid inside. I stepped back, watching as she pulled away, taillights disappearing into the night. And for the first time in months, I wasn't looking back. The next morning, I woke up with sunlight streaming through the window of my rental house. And for the first time in a long time, I felt light. No weight on my chest. No lingering ache in my gut. Just peace. I rolled over, stretching, and caught sight of my hand, the smudged ink of Sarah's numbers still faint on my skin. A few weeks ago, I wouldn't have been ready for that. Hell, a few days ago, I might have overthought it, let the past sink its claws in, telling myself I needed more time. But now I realized something. Moving on wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It was about choosing. Choosing to stop letting it define me. Choosing to step forward instead of standing still. Choosing to build something new. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I wanted to. The business was thriving. Cutting Jake out had been the best thing I could have done, not just for my sanity, but for the company itself. Without him, I had full control. No second guessing. No compromises. I hired a new project manager, landed a few big contracts, and finally took the leap into expanding the company like I'd always wanted. For years, I played it safe. Stuck to what was comfortable. But not anymore. For the first time in my life, I was betting on myself. And it felt damn good. One afternoon, I got an email from my lawyer. Subject line, divorce finalized. I clicked it, scanned the message, and saw the words I'd been waiting for. All documents have been processed. Case officially closed. That was it. Lisa was officially out of my life. No ties. No unfinished business. I stared at the screen for a moment, expecting to feel something. Sadness? Regret? But there was nothing. Just relief. And that's when I knew I was free. That night, I sat on my porch, phone in hand, staring at Sarah's number. I thought about what Ryan had said. About how I wasn't dead. About how life was still out there, waiting for me. I took a breath, exhaled slowly, and hit call. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Mike, she said, like she'd been expecting it. I smiled. Hey, Sarah. And just like that, the next chapter began. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. Share this video with your loved ones. It might brighten their day or give them a new perspective. And before you go, check out the video on your screen. It's another heartfelt story you won't want to miss.